So the first order of business tonight is to take any public comment on matters not on the agenda. Great. Then we're going to have a continued, I'll ask for a motion to open the continued public hearing for 1 Deer Hill Road, the site plan review, construction of 2 multifamily homes on the same lot with more than 1 residential dwelling unit in each building.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Great. Welcome. And John is recusing himself from this discussion. So.
Sure. I'm Tom Ford. I've been before you a couple other times about this 1 Deer Hill Road thing. I brought the gang with me tonight. Where we are since we last met is we did have a design review meeting. We responded to their comments. I think you have all seen those. I have with me Rick Salvo from Engineering Alliance, who's done the civil work on this, the utilities, the grading, drainage. Julie McDonald, who I think you know, from Wilson Lewis, is going to talk about the architecture, and Matt Ulrich from Ulrich Landscape Collaborative did the landscaping plan, which I'm very happy with. I think you will be too. But I hope you've had a chance. I know we didn't get them to you very much in advance, and I'm sorry about that. But there was a little coordination required in that. I think we have a pretty happy plan. You'll recall this is your first 3A project, I think, and it's the 2 duplexes. We were, subsequent to this discussion in this room, able to make 2 duplexes work very nicely on the site. And I'm happy to show you what we've ended up with. So if it's okay, I'm going to let Julie go first.
Are you, can you
Yeah, I can share.
screen?
Just tell me which
Maybe just
set
start
you
with
want.
the architectural, O2. Architectural provisions. Yeah, you can.
Okay.
Actually,
I understand that you have a pretty full agenda. I've asked everybody to be succinct. If you have questions that are unique to landscape or unique to architecture or something, let them fly. But if you have questions about the project, I would propose that we get through everybody's first and then let those happen.
Architecturally, we've really just worked on nuancing some of the details. We did meet with design review on the 24th of June, and they had some great comments. In general, I think they liked it and wanted us to look at window patterns. Some of the siding was an issue. We did a little bit of shifting between buildings 1 and 2 to give them more breathing space there. And I think that was pretty much their comments. I mean, other than that, we've got, as we did before, but developed a little bit further, we've got kind of 2 styles and some variation from building to building. So, we have 2 buildings connected by a walkway, a little walk under connector. But it appears as 4 homes, and each is slightly different than the others. So it was really just a development. A lot of attention to site work and landscaping.
Okay, what one do you want me to just go through these?
Oh, I would say if we want to go to site, I would do the O3, civil site plans.
Okay. Civil site plans?
Yeah.
Yeah, there should be more than one sheet in this set, right?
Yeah, I think you need to keep going down, yeah.
Almost drainage.
There's erosion control, there's grading, drainage, there's site
So you have to go
layout.
down, I have to scroll, yep.
I'm on
Okay.
site layout.
No,
Yeah,
here we go,
Yeah,
that's,
just keep going.
so this is the erosion control. This is a good plan to stop here. So again, my name is Rick Sal with Engineering Alliance. We were the site civil engineers. So as you can see, we've designed sort of a little bit more robust of a residential driveway to get into service each one of the dwelling units. You pull in off of Deer Hill Road, plan right, you come into the first driveway, you come down to the second driveway, and then you can see the road narrows a little bit more to the third driveway. We've left a little opportunity for sort of a hammerhead style turnaround there. If you go to the next slide, I think it shows a little bit better.
The next sheet.
Go to the next sheet. The site topography at Deer Hill Road, you're about at elevation 55. The driveway climbs up to about elevation 63. 63 is, about elevation 60 is predominantly the flat portion of the site, which is kind of all in this area right here. And then the topography from here takes off a bit to about elevation 75 at the rearmost point of the property. So all the stormwater runoff right now flows kind of from the bottom of the screen up to the top of the screen. So what we're proposing is an infiltration trench right along the edge of the road. That's a 3 foot wide by 3 foot deep trench wrapped in filter fabric, filled with wash stone, with a perforated pipe inside of it, which then discharges into a couple rows of Cultec chambers that are located in this berm here. So in this area here, we'll be building up a berm about 3 feet high that will act as kind of a visual barrier between this development and the houses that front out on the main street. Also act as a drainage barrier to make sure that all of our stormwater flow stays on our property and will infiltrate into that trench. This is a site that will obviously disturb less than an acre. It's only 35,000 square feet. So we've designed it to the standards to hold a minimum 1 inch of runoff times all the impervious surfaces, which also happens to meet the DEP's water quality volumes and required infiltration volumes. In addition to that, each house will have its own water service, and then we'll be running one sewer trunk service up to the site that everyone will have an opportunity to tie into. So again, fed by municipal water, municipal sewer, working with the topography as much as we can, so that the cut at the bottom of the page becomes the fill at the top of the page. To just kind of balance the site off and just minimize impacts. So that's essentially the way the civil end of things line up.
Okay.
If you'd mind pulling up the landscape plan.
So that would be 05 landscape drawing.
Possible to rotate that?
Maybe.
Problem is I couldn't figure out.
Yeah, we can muscle through.
Can you figure
Oh, yeah,
out?
maybe
Oh,
the
there you
bottom
go.
center tab. Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
Right, you need to turn it around.
This is the opposite direction as the last one, right?
Yeah.
So I need to turn it again.
Press it 2 more times.
Okay,
There you go.
so Pine Street is down here.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So just kind of starting at the entry, we've given some thought to the kind of entry and arrival sequence coming off Deer Hill Road. So right when you come in onto the driveway, we've got a kind of a low field stone wall on the left, bookended by a couple bigger shade trees as you enter the property. Then on the right, there's an abutter driveway, so we're doing some screening with some hedging there on the right side, and we're actually going to introduce this vernacular of a kind of like a white picket fence, probably like a square style white picket fence that runs in front of that hedge. On the left side, there's basically, trying to space as many kind of bigger shade trees where we can get them, where there's the room, and some foundation plantings along the front of each unit with little permeable paver walkways. And then on the right side of the drive, as Rick had mentioned, there's kind of a landscape berm that is on the other side of the infiltration trench. The thought with that entire area is that we would introduce kind of a native wildflower seed mix as opposed to having a humongous lawn that's kind of unnecessary. So the thought is we would just kind of try and revegetate, kind of heal the site. We're plugging in some bigger river birch. Those are those bigger circles with the 3 circles in the middle. It's a multi-leader tree. So the nice thing about that berm is it gives them a little bit of extra height as a buffer between our property and the abutters behind it. And those will be kind of populated throughout that meadow area, along with some bigger evergreen trees and some evergreen shrubs kind of spotted throughout. You'll see there are, each unit has kind of an individual patio for private space. That's another permeable paver, basically. And those are kind of surrounded by some plantings. You'll see just basically some, again, trying to introduce some shade trees too at the back of the unit. So you'll see like in that hammerhead driveway, we've got a couple bigger trees bookending that. And then we're picking up another tree on the unit on the far left side in the back, along with some evergreen trees in that kind of sloped area.
The one thing that I think everybody did a good job at is garage doors. You'll see but the one on the first lot and on the left. There's a single garage door that we couldn't make go away. But all the other ones in the parking that is associated with it is sort of tucked behind the buildings.
Great, okay. Questions, comments? All right, other plans that you want me to bring up? Or other plans that the board wanted to focus on? Okay, I'm just gonna bring back up the architectural. Gordon, well, anything more from the applicant right now? Gordon, can you tell us about the design review? And was there you generated a memo, I think.
I think generally, Gary's here, I see, so I think generally the design was well accepted as far as the layout, the architecture, the rhythm of the buildings, the idea of putting the parking not facing the front of the building was something that's actually very good. Something I see so often now. You see the front door of the parking garage, but in this case, you do not here. The comments that we had, Gary, please help me with this too if I miss one. The one that I thought, me personally, I felt that the buildings, I'll call them buildings 1 and 2 as you come in from the road here, were a bit too close together. I was wondering if I haven't seen a drawing that separates them a little bit further.
Yes, we did. We did move because we could be pretty tight between 2 and 3. So we did shift 2 and 3 down towards the 4th. So we do have more space now between.
So 1 is where it was, 2 and 3 have moved, shifted a little bit.
Yes.
So you gave a little more space between the buildings.
Yes.
Is that, oops. We just lost our Zoom.
I can see it.
Should I,
Yeah, I have it on mine too.
oh, we just lost it.
There was also something, we had a quite lively discussion about the building facade and the fenestration, windows and such. Would you mind just going
I
into
think it
detail?
was really,
John, can you just go push that X on the, or somebody on the X on that message?
This one?
Yeah, hopefully that'll. Thanks.
it was really the muntin pattern more than anything. So it wasn't the window layout per se, but the way we were handling the muntins. If you remember, we had two over
Could you bring
one.
up the elevation, John?
And we talked about the option of doing 4 over 1 and also 6 over 1, which we can still, I don't know, I wouldn't say this is final, but we're now showing 4 over 1 kind of typically across. We looked at the idea of varying between, but it really feels to us like we like the idea of there being a common language between them, even though they're different. We're carrying some details from building to building, but not the same in each. And similarly, that window pattern feels nice, keeping it consistent. You can also see here that we've added a different material. We've got vertical board at the porches. in the trim color.
Which one is that? Would you mind to point
Yeah,
to that?
sure. That's at these recessed areas, so really at every porch condition where you're a little bit in shadow as you go in to enter the house, we've changed from the clapboards to vertical board. And you can see it here too. Really, it's where it's white, so that would be trim color. And we're showing clapboards with shingles above, typically with this special treatment highlighting the entries. Metal roofs, again at the entry locations, with some special.
So the metal roof is on the lower elevations, the little brows right there. And strip shingles on the main roofs.
Yes. And a little bit of special detail at a couple of the locations.
What's the strip on the gambrel roof, portions? What's the strip of light above the windows?
This is trim with some corbel detail, which is another item that we talked about at the design review meeting, was just adding a little bit of special detail. So that happens just at those conditions, and we have it was really a lot of space to fill, so that feels really good there. And then the gables is just a little smaller feeling, so they don't really need extra detail in the same way. We didn't think.
Okay, so you're comfortable with the
I
design
am,
review has,
actually, I like, now that I've seen the
has
additions that have been made since the,
been
yeah, I think it
responded.
actually
okay, great.
looks better. I think it looks good. By the
So,
way, just as a little sidelight, I've been counting window over windows. I found I found the 16 over 12.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I said, oh my God.
That's kind of a historic thing. I mean, really, originally, they couldn't make big glass, so you see that in the very
Right.
old houses.
And these are not divided lights, correct? These are a grill work applied to a,
Yes, the SDL, so they're applied to both sides, so there's not the.
oh, really? Great. Gary, do you have any questions?
Yeah, we mentioned, but
Oh, yeah, okay, go ahead.
I think some of these things the way to codify them is if you add a note to your drawings, because you can't really see all the detail from these elevations, but it would be good. We talked about adding crown molding to all the windows instead of just flat boards, and I think you could accomplish that by putting a note on the drawing so that it gets in the project.
We
And
talked
we-
about that, I don't think we bought into that.
But we are showing at the front, we did add another detail piece. So we've got the typical casings and a 1.5 inch trim above at the fronts. And a lot of locations that window trim's engaged with the running trim. So in this location, for instance, you wouldn't need it because there's actually trim right here. So where the window casing is touching trim, we wouldn't do that, but wherever it's in a field, I think we would add the trim
What's the trim you're talking about adding specifically?
here.
Window head casing or?
And no, it's
Like a
above the
shingle
head
mold?
casing. It's another piece of trim above the head casing, so it's part of the head casing. So we've got the wrapped 5 1/4 by 5, and then above that we've got 1.5 inch square trim that
Where the windows are independent or not touching.
where they're not engaged with trim above them. Yeah. But we would do the same with a triple window if it didn't have trim above it.
And we talked about two other things, color palette and roof height. I think we requested that you might vary the color palette on them because we wanted them to look like 4 different buildings, not just the same thing you're produced, even though your massing is they're quite different the way they're designed. To accentuate their being different, they use
Yeah, we
4
love
different
that.
color palettes.
Yeah.
And then the roof height, you only have 1.5 story buildings, and we talked about taking at least one of them anyhow, that's immediately, I think it's the second and third building, and even go up a couple of feet just to break that rigid, the same roof height line.
Oh,
What we talked about there was the grade moves up So it's not gonna be a straight line across, they're gonna bump up as you go down, 1 through 4.
That's all I have.
These are meant to be cousins, not siblings, so, you know.
So I have a question for, I guess, for Gary, Gordon, and the team. This is our first application of the design standards. So conceptually, the design, your comments to the design team should be largely bound by the standards. So it would be, rather than just, you know, what you like or what you don't like. So I think it'd be really helpful, now that you've gone through it once, to go back through the standards and say, do these standards work? You know, in the zoning, there are design standards,
We
and
did do that, we did have a meeting.
so they were useful, at least as a,
We went through the whole bylaw, and took bullet points,
Okay.
condensed it into a sort of synopsis.
Yep.
And then we had our meeting, and since then, we've developed something that we have to talk amongst ourselves, but we developed a format for reviewing.
Great.
It would basically be 4 groups reviewing the massing, the
Exactly.
details and trim. In the
Okay.
4 sections, again, compliant, coming straight from where the
Okay.
bylaw is written. So, and then what we should do is give you a written 1-page summary as our
Yeah.
report to you before a meeting like tonight. So we would report back to the planning board, and then you would then decide the ultimate decision.
yeah. So I guess my point is, if, and also invite the team, as well as if you have comments on the design standards in the zoning, like particularly things that are grossly missing or just wrong, and this is the first application of them, then we should modify the zoning to make it better or right. So that's just kind of a,
There's one thing that was missing that I noticed, that it could just be, we could just do a handout to people when they apply, but they should give us a site plan that shows 1 or 2 adjacent buildings all the way around it, so we can see on a plan in its context, which we couldn't see in this application.
okay, but you could also do it with a sidewalk too, so.
Can I
Yes,
answer,
it could be reviewed.
can I answer your broader question, though, Sarah? Did the design standards work?
Yeah,
And I would say yes. Yes, this is our first venture on using them, but I think overall they work very well.
okay, good.
They definitely provided guidelines and boundary conditions.
Great.
And it's funny, I just read them just before I came here tonight here, but the idea is we're not dictating a cookie cutter design in every property. There has got to be some freedom for the designer to do what he thinks is appropriate for the particular project. And I think this job particularly achieved that.
And I guess I invite the design team too to get back to Mark or to any of us if there are things that just didn't make sense, you know. We're probably not gonna rush to amend zoning and MBTA zoning anytime soon, unless it's a small change, but anyway.
The
No,
bylaw could
no.
be reduced in size, there's a lot of paragraphs in it, and there's a little bit too much talk about how you walk around the sites, and that's not really so relevant to a design review board. Like
You want the
pedestrian
design
circulation
committee, the design standards committee?
could be
He
reduced.
he is.
Anyway, yeah, okay, I think there are opportunities to rewrite, but we're not gonna, I'm thinking of major omissions or,
Yeah, I think the fact that the submission itself, they had been careful to kind of go through this, appears. And because of the flexibility of the way this was written, you could design, some like federal style buildings, and that would still fit in here if it, or some other colonial style building. So I think it allows the flexibility, and they went through this. The board then, had specific comments on how they feel it should be improved, but I don't think the bylaw itself there was anything flawed. There's a lot to read through, which Gary is correct, but that doesn't. But like a bullet point kind of outline the next time to run through, kind of like we did, is.
okay, then my follow-up question is, we've had a design review, the architect has done that, it's gonna get built exactly like, everybody's gonna be really happy. And how does the 5 years or 10 years from now, there's a new owner, they wanna change the color, they wanna add various window treatments. How does that work? How do we structure our permit, our review, our approval to have the design review process sort of be binding on, or the design be binding, and maybe it's a condo documents type thing.
Well, the condo docs, you know, and would be part of the thing, because this is a common owned piece of land.
Yeah.
So the snow plowing, the landscape, all that's common, but because of the density in the 1.75 acres, I don't think you're ever gonna see somebody come in, and might say, maybe kick out a dormer on over the garage or something is what you'd see. And that would be a building permit process. Maybe if it's a 3A project, you know, it gets a quick review, but I would like to be able to sell these with the caveat that you kind of own what you bought, you know,
Yeah.
you don't own the land underneath it, but you kind of own what you bought.
Yeah, I guess the building permit process is the place that they would presumably flag. You know, if somebody wanted to paint it pink with purple polka dots, you know. And you've gone through the color palette in the design review, and somebody you know, that's a little bit of a question, how do you?
Well, there'd be at least 3 others that would say pink with purple.
I want green with purple. Okay, well, we'll hopefully, the building permit,
So Tom, this is still a condo association, there'll be a homeowner,
I get confused here, it's either condo or co-op or something.
condo or co-op, okay.
there's some common ownership, but, okay. Other comments from the board or questions? Feels like you've done a good job.
So this is great. This submission is thorough
Yeah.
as I've seen since I've been doing it, so thank you for that. But just a couple of questions about the, there was a section where best management practices was detailed, and there was some discussion about maintaining the pervious pavers once a year, and they're twice a year in the first year, and then subsequently every year after that. I'm just wondering, how is that monitored? Is that in the condo docs as well? Is that something that will be addressed?
It would have to be, but the pervious pavers in this particular project are limited. It's those little back areas, you know, so
Right.
maybe in total it's from here to there.
But that's one example. On that
Stormwater.
that plan, there are a lot of other reference to the driveway when it's for, you know, making sure that when we have a heavy storm, that it's monitored and checked to make sure that everything that you planned is actually working. It's just a bunch of like accountability pieces in that document. I'm just curious as to how that gets addressed.
Well, you know, as a developer, I'm on it for a couple of years anyway.
Right.
And there's some talk that we might end over there. But with 4 owners tightly, it's very similar to what's happening just down the street or over on, you know, we have a lot of examples of 4 tightly where I don't think they need outside help with that, because I do believe there's a subtle peer pressure that would happen if somebody was, you know, making a mess.
A lot of that stuff probably gets fixed into a landscape contract too, right? The lawn's gonna get mowed, I think that's gonna get maintained. So as part of the spring cleanup, a lot of it, that's when the majority of this O&M planning stuff happens, is after the roadways get sanded and salted and whatever, on the driveways.
But there was just reference to stormwater management in there too, and I'm just curious as to once that system is built to make sure that it works. And it sounds like it's more than capable of working, so.
It's sort of on us to give it the, you know, to get started dry. And then there's no real reason for it ever to.
Right.
It's infiltration.
Usually if there's a problem prior to them completing the project, because projects take a while to get done, that's when problems arise, and we find out about it at that time, so before it's done, so we can ask them to make corrective action. The swales are too steep and they start, for example, you know, scouring and digging and eroding the hill, and so they have to come up with another change. You know, the infiltration chambers are too small. You know, I've run across numerous issues like that, and they have to come come up with a solution and fix it before the developer is out of the project, so usually it comes up.
I also just put up the maintenance log, which is in the back, but it does, I think the enforcement officer is the building inspector, so I think it, because we don't have a, somebody who can really run around and do this, but if there's problems, then it does fall back to the homeowner, because they've pledged that they're annually going to schedule vacuum cleaning of the, I don't know if you can see that, but it says schedule, I made it smaller. First 12, this is the pavers, once a year scheduled vacuum cleaning. So, that's an example of how the maintenance commitments are supposed to, and it looks like they're gonna be part of the condo documents, so.
And most of those pavers aren't gonna be susceptible to anything that's gonna have the tendency to clog them up. They're not in the road, they're outside the road. People generally don't sand and salt their patios in the winter time, like they let the snow just accumulate on them, so.
And the other question I have about this is on the landscape plan, it looks like a lot of the flowers and all that are around the buildings themselves have been identified here. They're all native, which is great. And I just wonder, will the homeowner, the condominium owner, have any rights to alter that at all when they, because it looks to me like the way it's presented that it's all gonna be there when they, or at least that the list of what was presented here will be included in whatever the details
That's
are.
what will be built.
Yeah.
If you're asking me in year 18 and someone loses a load out.
No, I'm just, yeah, no, I mean, I just,
Yeah,
no, it's great because the list is great. I mean, it's all native stuff, which is awesome.
I think a very good job in
Yeah.
the kind of berm, natural piece between Pine Street and these is.
And do they need a stormwater permit from Chuck? So they'll use, that Chuck will review the drainage and calcs, so. Okay, any other comments from the board? You were gonna say something. when
No, I was just gonna say this, for the first project under the MBTA zoning, this is a remarkable success, I think, for the
Yeah.
town. And I think we've learned a lot. I think the design review committee's learned a lot and it's gonna probably get better with time also. So, thank you for your patience in going through this with us.
No, thank you for the nice words, and to be candid, it was an easy way to do the right job here because it was a gift that fell to me. I had expected to do single families here, so lucky me, lucky you, I guess.
Okay,
Lucky town.
housing production. Okay, comments, any comments from the public online or from the room? If I'm missing anybody, speak up. I don't think anybody's on, so. Okay, so I think what we want to do is close the public portion of the hearing and then,
Continue it to the next meeting, and we'll draft,
you'll have a draft decision at the next
yeah,
meeting.
hopefully we'll have Chuck's,
Stormwater plan.
stormwater report, complete,
Okay, well, maybe we might as well leave everything open in case there's some new change, but I think the sense of the board is that we would be prepared at the next meeting to just have a draft, and maybe you can share the draft with the applicant before the meeting, so if there's any comments, we can get them, but I think you come with a skeletal crew. So I'll take a motion to continue the Deer Hill, One Deer Hill hearing until August 10th. And I'm gonna say at 7, because that way we could have heard historic first. So at 7 o'clock. And so I'll take a motion to that effect.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, and we'll try to wrap this up on August 10th, and Mark will get you a draft.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay.
You can just leave that, we'll get, thank you.
Okay, before we get into the housing production plan, we want to talk about the historic district Historic Commission and strategy for a demolition delay. So a couple people from Historic Commission here. Rosemary and Matt. You're on Historic?
Kevin is our
Kevin.
newest member.
Oh, great.
So you have,
Kevin.
Oh. Fabulous,
so
welcome.
you have to open the meeting.
We were,
You're posted,
we're
they're
a joint meeting.
Oh, joint meeting,
Yeah.
excellent, okay.
So I opened the Historic District Commission joint meeting with the planning board. We're not hearing any applications for certificates of appropriateness or any of that. We're discussing demolition delay and all things historic preservation, I guess.
Maybe not all things.
Many things. Which is why we've invited Jen Doherty, who is with the Bartlett Group, who was going to consult with the Historic District Commission about how we should proceed vis-a-vis demolition delay and some other activities. And so I thought she could help us sort of steer that discussion one way or another and hear some of your other general district ideas. She's do you know the Bartlett Group? They're based in Hingham. Jen, you can explain all about that.
Yes. Hi,
Barrett,
everyone. I'm
sorry.
Jen Doherty. I'm preservation planning with Barrett Planning Group. And we are a community planning firm based in Hingham. We work all across Massachusetts, though, in other states as well, handling all sorts of community planning needs, everything from master plans to historic preservation planning, open space plans, housing plans, things like that.
Welcome. So, what are you thinking about, we have been talking as we walked, we've walked most of the general district. And as we've done that, we've walked through the town center district, the new town center district. And we've been observing also across town, older homes with history. I don't know if that means they're historic, and every building probably has history, being torn down and replaced with other types of construction, modern or simpler forms, new materials. Plastic. I guess some people like it and some people don't, but it's a departure, obviously, from some of the older forms and older. I'm not an architect, but so what do you think? And we had talked about a demolition delay several years ago. I think back when Betsy Ware was here, right?
There was a bylaw introduced in 2011 or 12 to the town meeting and it didn't pass. But the commission at that time didn't do a big push for public education according to their then commissioner chair. Jen, I reached out to a couple years ago when she worked for Mass Historic, the Mass Historical Commission, and I got the draft standard bylaw from them, and we talked about it in 2023. We made some tweaks, and then decided it was too much work. Because it's a campaign, to do public
Yes.
education
Oh, yes,
and get it
oh,
to
yeah.
the town meeting and get people to approve. And also recognizing the reality that some of the places that have been torn down, the economics are such that the owners don't really care. A year delay isn't gonna be much of a hiccup for them. When I reached out to Jen again, it was in the context of this and also other priorities that we have at the commission, maybe expanding the historic district or creating other historic districts. We've had a consultant who's been doing survey work in order to accomplish a couple of things like
in the event that we had a bylaw, demolition delay bylaw, we would have resources already identified. And so it would be easy to say, yes, this is historic, or no, this is not historic, or yes, it's historic, and also it's not that historic, so it's okay. So the more survey work we have done, the quicker a bylaw could be utilized effectively, and have review done. And so also, we could identify more districts, and the process of creating a historic district or expanding our current historic district is not a small task also. It is another public campaign and working with the state. And so when I reached out to Jen, she suggested maybe we needed to do a preservation plan, start at 30,000 feet and say, what does this community really want or need in terms of historic preservation? Do we need a bylaw? Do we need more historic districts? Do we need to expand our current district? Are there other tools that we're not utilizing to engage with property owners and say, hey, you want to tear down this mansion that is from 1920s and, you know, where F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote a significant story, or whatever historic significant property there might be. Are there other ways, with a bylaw or without a bylaw, we can engage the community about what is important? So that's what we are going to talk about in a couple weeks at the historic district meeting. So I invited Jen to come here and give us some guidance about how we should proceed.
Right, I think it'd be great to hear from Jen. Hear what
Sure.
these things are that
So-
these words we toss around, what are they?
Yeah, and so I think Rosemary gave a good summary there of kind of what we've talked about and some of the different options. You know, you don't need to do a preservation plan. You can certainly just kind of charge ahead with a demolition delay bylaw, or you know, adopting a local historic district or expanding the existing district. I think I was, you know, recommending the plan. I was responding to some of what Rosemary was saying around, you know, not really knowing what the appetite was in the community for historic preservation, and some of these different things like a demolition delay bylaw or more historic districts. And then, you know, thinking about other options for preservation beyond just demo delay or local historic districts, you know, thinking about things like zoning, thinking about other sort of soft public outreach methods of historic preservation. So that was why I recommended a preservation plan, because it does sort of look holistically at the community, you know, at what you've done to date in terms of historic preservation work. Again, you know, including some public engagement to consider what residents and property owners in Manchester actually want in terms of historic preservation, and then making some recommendations for potential things like demo delay or more local historic districts. So that was my recommendation, but I can certainly talk more about the demo delay bylaw process or local historic district process if you are interested in hearing more about that.
Sandy?
Yeah, I'd like to hear about two things. I'd like to hear very much about what a preservation plan actually involves in terms of both process and content. And I'd love more talk about the demolition delay.
Sure. So a preservation plan, it's similar to any other plan that a community develops in terms of kind of process and content. If you think of your master plan, or, you know, if you have an open space and recreation plan, housing production plan, you know, you're looking at what the community's done to date. You know, what kinds of preservation regulations do you have? What do you know about the historic resources in Manchester? As Rosemary said, they've been doing a lot of survey work, which helps to fill in some of that information. It also looks at, you know, what's on the ground today, what regulations are in place today, how does Manchester do preservation currently. There's some community engagement involved, again, to kind of understand what residents value about their community, what they value about their historic resources. And then those two are sort of married together to inform recommendations about what Manchester should do going forward. So, you know, here's what residents value about their community, about their historic resources. here's how we can work to protect them. Whether again, that's adopting demo delay or, amending some zoning regulations, whatever the case may be. So that's kind of a preservation plan in a nutshell. And then demo delay, so as Rosemary said, the state has a sample bylaw, the Massachusetts Historical Commission has a sample bylaw. There is no enabling legislation, so it is just a bylaw that a community adopts as a general bylaw, kind of however it wants to adopt that bylaw, through town meeting or simple majority vote. And basically demo delay bylaws, they kind of set a threshold of certain properties that are reviewed under the bylaw to consider whether they're historic and or architecturally significant. And then if they are historic and or architecturally significant, are they preferably preserved is the phrase. And then if they're preferably preserved, the Historical Commission, or in the case of Manchester, the Historic District Commission, has the ability to impose a delay period. So a couple things are defined in the bylaw, that threshold of properties that are reviewed. Some communities actually review everything that comes up for a demolition permit. Some communities review buildings constructed before a certain year. The Massachusetts Historical Commission generally recommends communities use 50 years as the cutoff, so anything that's older than 50 years. And then the other big piece to define in that bylaw is the delay period itself. Delays vary widely across the state. They go from 30 days all the way up to 2 years. So that's something that the community can decide on through, a bylaw community engagement process. What that threshold of properties that are reviewed is, and then what the delay period is. The demolition delay bylaw, it is a delay. At 2 years and 1 day, that property owner can apply or receive their demolition permit and move forward with demolition. It does not permanently protect properties, but it does put a pause in the process to kind of see if there are other options for potentially preserving the property aside from demolition.
How many communities in Massachusetts have demolition delays?
I believe it's around 160 right now, if I remember my charts correctly.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
And I would say probably 5 of our neighboring communities have.
Yeah, certainly like most of the eastern half of the state has it. Certainly areas where there is demolition pressure.
Can I ask you a question, Sarah? What's the justification for the town to actually issue a demo delay?
So it's sort of a two-piece process, or at least that's how the bylaw is recommended. So it's that initial determination, is the building historically or architecturally significant? Did something significant happen in the building? Is its architecture notable? Was it designed by someone that's especially notable? And that's, usually up to the Historic District Commission to make that decision. That's kind of where that survey information comes in that Rosemary was talking about that the commission is already working on. And then the second piece is the building preferably preserved? So is it so historically and architecturally significant to the community that we should impose this delay period? Is it the last of its kind? Is it, very, holds such a really important role within the community? Those kinds of questions lead to something being preferably preserved.
So this isn't, as you just mentioned, this is in fact a delay. It doesn't stop it from the change actually occurring, just depending on when it occurs.
Yes, exactly. So,
Interesting.
ideally during the delay period, the property owner and the historical commission kind of work together to see if there's a way to save the building. I've seen things like, alternative construction plans proposed. Maybe we can move what we were planning to do a little bit on the property. I've seen properties sold, either the entire house and the property is sold to a new owner who then goes through with preservation. I've seen buildings moved as a way of preservation during the demo delay period. So there's, different options that the property owner and the historical commission, hopefully work together to kind of explore during that delay period.
Interesting.
Do people ever use a sort of broader brush of a rule that says if most of the older buildings in town are concentrated in one area or in a sort of general area down around the downtown? And are there rules that say any demolition within this area? It doesn't have to be within the historic preservation
It
district.
has to be townwide, it's a general bylaw.
It has to be townwide. Okay.
Yeah,
So
so
it can't
the
be a
demo delay,
specific
it's a townwide general bylaw.
Don't you think that's good? Because we do have historic or architecturally significant houses all over town.
Yeah, and actually, it's often the case that they are sort of sporadically spread out.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, in Beverly Farms, one that I worked on recently, was located sort of near downtown, but then it had a sister house that was just as old, completely the other side of town. So a district wouldn't have captured either one. So what I love about the demo delay bylaw is it does capture the entire town. So there are houses that I know of that are extremely old, that are completely unprotected at this point.
Or, I mean,
Little town is.
the old Unitarian Church on Proctor Street.
Yep.
That's an interesting architecture, it's old, it's had interesting things happen there.
Which is kind of the impetus for us
Right.
bringing this up again, because I brought the question.
Well, there've been
up,
several that have been torn down in the
right.
past year, the 1700 house on Bennett Street.
Chris has a comment.
So I have a question, actually. I understand that Brookline and maybe some other cities and towns, in addition to demolition delay, have a design review process for the replacement building. And I'm wondering if that is something you're aware of or something we should be considering.
I don't know about anything specific in terms of a separate bylaw, but what some communities will do is sort of a carrot and stick approach with design review during the delay period. So, a building is significant, we don't want to lose it, it's preferably preserved, we're imposing the delay period. But the Historic District Commission has the ability to waive the delay period at any point during that time. So it doesn't need to go all the way to 2 years or whatever the delay period is set as. And so some communities will say, okay, like we understand this building is probably going to be demolished at 2 years and 1 day. We're willing to waive that delay period and have it expire sooner if the property owner submits to some kind of design review working with the historical commission on the replacement building. So it gets the property owner kind of through their process, hopefully a little shorter, they don't have to go through the full delay period. It hopefully gets the community a bit of a better design than what they might have had if the building was just demolished and waited out the full delay period.
Mark, you look like you're gonna say something.
The ones that I have been through, we always present what we're going to do, partly as a way to help convince them that we're not doing something bad. And very recently in Beverly, we were working on a school, and we were taking down an old garage that had been there a long time. And it was significant because it was designed by a pretty well-known architect, but it was a garage, right? And it always had been. So they found it significant, but they did not find it preferably preserved, mostly because the use that we were proposing, where it was going to get knocked down and do, was a better benefit to the community than keeping the old garage. So I think that's something that we should encourage. I don't know how we do it exactly with the wording in the bylaw, but that, it's a good opportunity for the town to see what is being planned for that location and for us to review it, perhaps, not us,
Yeah.
someone to review.
Unfortunately, not all architects are as good as you are, and some of the buildings built in Manchester don't appear to have architects at all.
True.
And I think that's what we're trying to dissuade as much as possible.
Richard?
Jennifer, can you talk a little bit about what the real impact of the delay period is, given that most projects take quite a while to go to completion anyway? So how much impact does a one-year delay really have on someone, given that they know they can wait it out for a year? So from day one to day 365, they can get everything ready to go and shovel hits the ground on day 365.
Yeah, and that's the balancing act that communities kind of need to figure out, what works best for them. In my experience, so as Rosemary said, I was at the Massachusetts Historical Commission up until about a year and a half ago, as a local government programs coordinator, working with communities, going to meetings like this and answering questions about demo delay. And, with what we've seen in recent years with demo delay is that, when I had started, or even before I started at MHC, 6 months was where the majority of communities were at. They had a 6-month delay, and that was working for them, and that was great. In the sort of, I'd say, 20-teens to early 2020s, that really started to shift up to 2 years, to 12 months. And then communities started creeping beyond that to like 18 months. I know Salem has some of their properties are 18 months up there. And then Milton and Watertown are the 2 communities that have gone up to 2 years at this point. I don't know that anyone's gone beyond that, but those are the 2 longest ones. And then I think Lexington does 21 months for their National Register listed properties. So it's certainly been moving more and more because of that issue, because folks are saying, well, if it's going to take me, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months to get through permitting anyways, I'll file for my demolition permit right at the beginning. And then, once my planning board approval is in hand, I'll probably have my demolition permit because I've waited out the delay period. So it's certainly kind of a balancing act to think about like how the process usually works in the community, how long your permitting usually takes. And kind of when you are looking for people to, go through this demolition delay process.
So, I'll get to you in a second, Gary. So is it, just to follow up on that, would I sort of infer then, if you are a experienced developer with a good team, and who works across Massachusetts, you would anticipate this? You'd buy the property, you'd file your demo permit on day 1. To sort of Richard's point, is then you'd, get your stuff together. I don't really care what Manchester Historic District Commission has to say. I'm going to do whatever I want because it's going to take me that long to get my permits together. And the lay person who buys a home and hires an architect and gets their dream house together and then goes for a demolition delay says, what? I got to wait 2 years. So is that probably the way it cuts?
Well, probably the layperson has a realtor who knows, and the realtor's gonna tell them.
Maybe.
Sarah, I don't worry so much about the big developer person because we have other mechanisms in place to review those kind of projects. And hopefully the design review board might find a way to kind of get that in there too. I worry more about, to be honest, the homeowner who owns a house from 1753 and wants to knock it down. That's the character, the fabric of the town. Yeah.
I suppose then, if we're trying to preserve small scale historic homes, then those aren't going to be as likely to be bought up by a big developer.
And this is where something like that preservation plan comes in, because this is kind of where I brought this topic up to Rosemary as well. Is trying to figure out like what are we trying to do with the demo delay bylaw? We can say, oh, we're going to review everything over 50 years and we're going to have it be 6 months for a delay. But is that really what Manchester needs, and is that really gonna preserve the kinds of buildings that Manchester residents wanna preserve? And so that's when you think about those pieces, think about how they work within the context of Manchester, with its historic resources, and then also thinking about other tools outside of the demo delay bylaw, like things like zoning or design review, and how can those kind of work hand in hand to really actually preserve what Manchester's looking to preserve.
It might be interesting to take some, like, test cases. Like, I'm thinking in my brain, for example, Tappan Street. That's an old building. It's gotta be over 100 years old.
Storage facility?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's an
Is it down the
interesting,
far end by the railroad?
Yeah.
I think we'd all love to see that develop into something great. But what if,
Demo delay.
what if a president, sat there once or something? I don't know.
Stored his boat there.
But to your earlier point, presumably, if it was subject to a delay, a multifamily housing developer would come in, and in that case, it already has design review. So the Historic District Commission would say, okay, we're gonna use that process to allow that delay to expire sooner.
Well, it could be that initially we look at what the survey has said and said, nothing happened there, it's just old.
Yeah,
And we say, no, go ahead, tear down.
right.
And then
That's
hand
And
it off
I-
to design review and they deal with it.
And in my experience, in speaking with communities, and I also served as the preservation planner for the city of Framingham, where we did have a delay, a demo delay. Communities are and historical commissions are very judicious in how they impose it. They're certainly not, throwing a 2-year delay on every little thing that comes up before them. I think when I was in Framingham, we only had one delay period over about 6 years that we actually kind of imposed and, went through the whole way. And that was a 1780s farmhouse. So it was still pretty significant, a really early building for Framingham. That's kind of the other piece of it. Is it historically and architecturally significant? Well, maybe it isn't, and maybe we're not even gonna get to the delay period at all.
I have another question, but Gary, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I've got two sort of comments, one of them's kind of a big picture, but I'm a little concerned about this, applying it to the whole town. Now, we all know there's some gorgeous mansions in town, and there's some beautiful old historic buildings downtown, but if they were identified and, say, taken out of the picture, if all the rest of the town was under a demolition delay, I'd sort of like to see a preservation survey being done. We keep talking about preservation plan, but how about surveying two sort of almost random chunks of land in town and tell us how many buildings really should we be that concerned about? There's a difference between being familiar with your neighborhood and a building being old there and versus imposing upon the owner of the building that he can't tear it down for 6 months or 9 months or whatever is chosen. And then the other subject is exemptions. I think there always needs to be, hopefully, a near term, like within a couple of weeks, some group would have a meeting. I contend, for example, the Prospect Street building was a faux Tudor building, and just to fix the wood trim on that building would have cost more than buying it probably, and it was wood stuck next to stucco, really difficult and expensive to fix and restore. I think that's an example of something cost prohibitive to restore. I thought it was gorgeous too. It had a weird floor plan also, but a person should be able to apply and say, hey, the cost doesn't merit you having me wait 6 months, and somebody should be able to review it and give them a near-term decision and exemption. So that process, I think, should be set in place.
So
I can kind of address both of those. So the survey that Rosemary was talking about, that is addressing that first piece of kind of what's here. How many buildings this is going to apply to, or what kinds of buildings do we care about in the town? What do we really want to try and capture with our demo delay bylaw? If the town did adopt a bylaw, as Rosemary said, the Historic District Commission has those what we call inventory forms available to them that says, yes, George Washington slept here, or, this was designed by so-and-so, it's an important building, or no, it is just old. So that survey work that the Historic District Commission has been doing that's really ongoing is sort of laying the groundwork for really understanding Manchester's historic resources, and then, would be used in reviewing these buildings for demo delay. The other piece about exemption, so there is usually an exemption for health and safety issues. Obviously, if the building commissioner condemns a building, there's no reason to go through the delay process. The building is condemned. It needs to come down for health and safety reasons. And to the sort of the cost point of it, that's kind of what the discussions during that delay period can be. So in my experience in Framingham, we had that 1780s farmhouse. The property owner was saying, oh, it's going to be expensive. It's too much. It's falling down. All these kinds of things. He did not do a great job of showing us that it was going to be too expensive and it was falling down. We disagreed with him. The building commissioner disagreed with him. He ended up subdividing and splitting the property and selling the historic building off to a new property owner. So that ended up being kind of the end of that one. It ended up being sort of a good outcome for the delay period. But that delay period is kind of that opportunity for the property owner to say, yeah, it's I bought this building for $500,000 and it's going to cost me $3 million to shore it up and make it look like something that's livable. So that's kind of what that delay period can be, as a sort of back and forth period.
So my follow-up to sort of Gary's point about cost is there any data or evidence at all on how this affects market prices? And I'm thinking about a house which has got some historic character and is going to be expensive to Gary's point, to renovate. Perhaps that drives down or keeps the house, the purchase price lower. And also, I'm just also thinking about a house we bought that is now going to be 50 years. When we bought it, they had plans, tear it down, put up this other thing. I don't know whether that made the property more or less expensive, but it was sort of part of the realtor's pitch. We didn't do that. It's fine, but I guess it would now be 50 years old. So, so I'm wondering if there's any evidence about how it helps or hurts market price, because we're concerned about market price in town and cost of homes, and that or is that such a complicated, does it keep homes a little bit smaller because scale, we're concerned about scale and price and housing and numbers of units and all those things. Is there any intersection that's obvious, or is it case by case?
I don't know, I think if there's 160 communities and
Doing it.
the majority are in the eastern part of Massachusetts, no.
Yeah.
I don't think it's
That's
affecting
true,
property.
because the prices are high in Eastern.
Yeah.
I don't know that anyone's ever done any sort of formal research on which way it goes. I can say there's certainly some towns where they don't care. And, again, the developers will just wait out there 18 months and do whatever they want with the property. There's some towns that have a sort of preemptive approval you can give. So in that case, you were citing about, looking at a house and the realtor was saying, oh, you can demolish it and, do whatever you want. That you could get kind of a preemptive approval before you sell your property that you're going to be able to demolish this. So towns handle it differently, kind of depending on the market of the community. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't know that there is any actual research on whether it goes one way or another, helping to preserve smaller, more naturally occurring affordable housing, or if it's, impacting sale prices in any way.
So I will offer perhaps the thought that for a developer, for a person who's looking to buy a property and make some money on it, a year is a significant amount of time. There's going to be an escalation in construction costs. There's going to be, just time equals money. So it adds a level of risk, I think, to some
Recycling.
projects, yes. Which might make some people go away. That could be good and bad, because if those are the folks who are trying to make a quick buck and build the things like on the corner of School and
Brook.
that may have been helpful to us to make it a little bit more difficult.
Sarah, and Jen, I was gonna ask a question because I read that some towns use a carrot and stick approach where there's an actual much larger fee for a demolition permit. With Boston even proposing a $10,000 fee they had a $150 fee, they wanted to go to $10,000 with the money going to their affordable housing trust. So, I mean, I think, and I was wondering, do you know of any communities that have put a larger fee on demolition, which might be more of an incentive to keep an historic building?
That I don't know. I haven't heard of any community using their demo fee in that way, because obviously the, a demolition permit fee applies to all buildings in the community, not just the historic ones. So even if you had a demo delay that, limited the buildings that were reviewed, so I can't say that I've seen a community do that.
Yeah, I don't think you can necessarily do that, because your fees need to be representative of your costs of issuing the permit, reviewing the project, so on and so forth. You just can't arbitrarily say, I'm gonna charge a really high fee, and then that money's gonna go to some other use that's really not connected at all, so.
Well, if you're looking at Boston, Boston did it.
Well, Boston is a different animal. Maybe they went to the legislature, of course, with legislative approval, they could do something like that. I do have a question for Jen, though. So I know of at least 2 or 3 really big houses, one in Gloucester, a couple in Newton. And I don't know the history. I know Gloucester didn't have a demo delay, so I know it never went through that, but really nice big historic homes that were torn down and replaced with a very similar building, like not quite an exact copy, but of course it was new, it had all the modern efficiencies. I'm sure inside it was gorgeous, the layout was probably different, but from the exterior, it was a very similar building, so it really maintained the same character and everything as the original building. So my question is, have you seen or do you have examples of where demo delay has helped? Yes, eventually you can tear it down, but if we work together to review a building design, we'll release your delay once we review the architecture and you agree to build this new style old building. So.
Yeah, and there's certainly plenty of examples kind of across the state, because that's been the goal of demo delays, to really kind of preserve buildings and get folks to work with them. There was another example of there was one in Danvers. It was a first period house, so it was built before 1720, a very early form of architecture. A nursing home had bought it to expand their parking lot, and the house was it was built before 1720, so it was, the corner was literally jutting into the sidewalk of the street, so it was, not placed very well on the lot. But I don't know if the nursing home really knew what they had when they bought it, and the historical commission up there, they ended up delaying the demolition. The town, because the building was so significant, the town actually ended up making it a local historic district, because you can prevent demolition in a local historic district. You can outright say no to demolition at that point. And so the nursing home, again, ended up kind of subdividing the lot. The Historical Commission and the Historic District Commission in Danvers, they wrote letters to the planning board and ZBA, in support of the sort of funky subdivision that they needed to do. But they ended up approving it. And then the house, I think it ended up selling for like $1.3 million or something like that. So, after somebody rehabbed it. So that's certainly, a fairly recent success story. That was just a few years ago. But that's kind of, typical of things that might happen during the delay period.
So I want to just talk, I have some opinion about process. And I can appreciate the need for the benefits of a preservation plan effort. But in my experience, the abstract questions about what do you want are very hard for people to answer. And that the success we've had with some of like MBTA zoning has been because we presented specific, and downtown zoning, we did have that sort of some workshops, but we presented concrete proposals that then we explained and advocated for and massaged. And I feel like that is a effective way, it has been effective recently, and also people's ability and time, their attention budget, I don't know what else to call it, but we've got a school, we've got other zoning, we've got, harbors, whatever, all housing production plans. We've had like a few people at housing production, everybody's on Facebook talking about affordable housing, and we have a hearing and we get 3 people, So I think people's attention budget is limited until it's specific. So that's, would be, and it seems that if 160 communities, mostly in eastern Massachusetts, have a demolition delay, that it would be in our interest to advance, that's my opinion, that we should advance something that's proactive, and figure out what those details look like, but
Do we know who the 5 communities you mentioned, Matt, are?
Yeah, I wrote them down. I think it's Hamilton, Ipswich, Essex, Beverly, Salem. Those are the ones I know offhand, just in Cape Ann area.
yeah. I mean, and as associate, those are different, those are similar and different from us.
Yeah.
So, my sense is that we should put something together as a draft and
Start
see-
to talk to
start
people
talking about it, and, I mean, August might not be the best time, but,
So who's we?
who's we?
So we have a draft.
Okay.
From 2023, which I think we had a 100-year delay, and then recently we
100-year delay, we're
100-year cutoff.
I was gonna say, that's really gonna stop a developer.
I think it was a 12-month delay with a 100-year cutoff point. So then we recently were discussing, do we want 100 years? Do we want 1925? Do we want like a, so that's where we needed to have the sort of community discussions about what does the community value? And so that's where I was hoping we could hire a consultant to help us, navigate the community conversations, and maybe we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone and make a plan happen in the process of introducing the delay bylaw as one of the elements of the plan. Does that kind of thing work, Jen, or is that too much?
I think the demo delay bylaw would kind of be its own thing, and then, if you decide to sort of move forward with the plan, that would be great, because there's other things a community can do in terms of historic preservation besides just a demo delay bylaw, but it's certainly, up to you all.
I have a question regarding what you just said. That's great. Has there been any work done in identifying the properties across the town that would qualify for, say, that 100-year?
So we have been doing this survey work.
Yep.
We've only done one area, which is sort of School Street, from School Street to Lincoln to Norwood. A second survey phase is underway, which is Norwood, again, south of Lincoln, north of the Historic District to Summer Street. We can only do so much with little money.
Yeah.
And the money has come from this past round, CPC, And prior to that, we got a grant from the state, which had to be matched locally. So, you know, there's only so much time and money to get these surveys
the
done.
assessors-
Don't we have that data?
Yeah,
I thought, yeah.
Richard,
We have age.
This is,
the problem.
the
And
study,
I
the
will
survey
say,
that Rosemary's talking about is critical, would be critical for actual implementation. We have assessors data.
Right.
Based on the assessors data, somewhere around a third of the buildings in town, I think it's 899 out of 2,100, something like
Wow.
that.
Are over
Over
That's
100.
crazy, wow, I would never would have.
And the assessor's data is not wholly accurate.
It's not wholly
So
accurate,
like
so
the
it's-
1920s is when they really started to actually know the dates.
Yeah.
So anything older than the 1920s is sort of like, who knows?
But wouldn't the historic commission make a determination when somebody
Comes
files
up.
a demolition permit?
Well, you wouldn't use the assessor's data to make that.
No, you would go out and look
No,
at the building.
So, can I chime in real quick?
Yes.
So usually it is actually the assessor's data that is used because that's considered to be kind of a neutral third-party date. It's not, the historical commission saying it's one thing, the property owner saying it's another. So usually there is language in there in the bylaw that says, the assessor's date is the date that is used. If there is no date for a building for some reasons, like an outbuilding or something, it's usually assumed to be older than whatever the threshold is. So.
But Jennifer, I assume that if we complete a survey, we're going to be updating the assessor's data or finding some way to get the assessor's data updated.
So that would be a conversation to have with the assessor.
Yeah.
So then that argues, again, more for the date, because we know that in our town, the records prior to the 20s are not very accurate.
Well, I'm not as pessimistic as you because I think they're not accurate, but they're ballpark.
Close enough.
And I would argue that you want to go with a length of time, 100 years or
Yes.
75 years, because
Yep.
as time, it takes a while to re-update, to refresh these, and so you want it to be rolling, right? So
It rolls over with the calendar year. It
Yeah.
is just 50 years, 75 years, 100 years. Rather than, yes, those communities that have, 1900 in there, you're getting further and further away from that continuously.
Jen, on the bell curve of the trigger dates, is 100 years in the top of that curve?
we just lost her.
Trigger dates are kind of all over the place, honestly, for communities. MHC recommends 50 years because that's sort of standard preservation practice. The National Park Service uses 50 years as sort of an initial threshold for National Register listing and review. But the one thing I do tell communities when they're picking their threshold is to make sure that it makes sense in terms of the community's development patterns. So I worked in a community where, a close-in suburb of Boston, it was, growing through the late 19th and early 20th century. You would go down a street that was, all two families and, the assessor had just kind of assigned them dates of, 1895, 1900, 1905, 1895, just seemed sort of random, but you knew they were all sort of built around the same time. But the community actually had a demolition delay date of 1900. So it was just sort of smack in the middle of their development, and they were essentially missing, everything from like 1900 to 1930, when things kind of started to slow down a little bit more. And, because the assessor's dates were sort of a little bit random in that sort of 1900 period, you would have buildings that you knew were built at the same time, but one would be subject to demo delay, one wouldn't be. So that's my only caution with kind of picking the date, is just making sure that it makes sense for Manchester's development and is not just sort of in the middle of something that was happening.
Okay. So, go ahead, Jim.
When we were doing our little sort of in-office survey of the town and trying to map the history, we had drawings, maps from 1840-ish, I believe, was the earliest that we had, that we were able to, locate houses on that, which was useful. Before that, though, there wasn't anything that we could really look at. And of course, since like 1920, it's quite easy to find historic
I
information.
think the thing is that wasn't a lot built in the 30s. So, you know, and so you're really talking about houses built before the 40s. And so I don't think it's super hard. I don't think we're that far away from this data.
And you had, how many, I mean, realistically, how many demolitions did we have in the last 5 years? Do we have any idea? I mean, it's not
Maybe-
huge
maybe
numbers.
10.
I mean, 5 or,
No, it's gotta be
No,
more than
we're-
that.
10 in the neighborhood.
It's gotta be
What?
10.
Yeah.
There's 10 on Smith's Point in the last 5 years, I think if we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
one of which would be arguably very historic.
And-
Very historic and significant.
And Eagle Head,
Bartol's
there
house.
have been 5 torn down at Eagle Head.
Yeah.
Okay. But Reverend Bartel's original house.
Oh, that was torn down in 1927.
But his, anyway. So, yeah, okay. So next steps, can we have, Jen and you guys work on it? I think we're saying we're happy to help with the forum and some of the, you know, we do have a modest planning budget too, which we're probably gonna use, but I don't know, we can assess that.
How much approximately is each survey? Does it depend on the geography?
Expensive.
The surveys, the current one is 20,000, and that's about 100 properties.
And what work are they doing? Like, what's
Right.
the work, actually?
The consultant does research on basically street by street. He walks the streets, he photographs the streets, he does research from the maps to see when they appeared. He writes up little histories, fills out these forms that get submitted to the state historic preservation database called MACRIS. So he's looking at where he can find who lived there, you know, some of the information about uses, if they were not just houses, what kind of.
So I wonder if that level of detail is necessary. Like, if a house comes before us and it's an issue, that would be the time to dig in and say, oh geez, what do we have here?
This is true. This is more in maybe thinking about expanding the historic district.
Creating a
That's a
historic
different
district.
kettle of fish.
Yes. This is much more information than you would need. For instance,
To
if
do-
a house came up, that's gonna get demoed.
For a demolition delay, and I do think we know a lot already. I mean, John's made some maps, I know Richard's done heat maps. I mean, we know a lot about how many old buildings there are in town.
You may have done this already, but I think it'd be really good to be explicit about what the purpose is and what the criteria would be to grant an exemption. Like if it's a banal house that really, who cares? It'd be nice to tell the guy in shorter term time than 6 months. But it would seem to me that the purpose would be reuse, relocation, or an alternate sale. There may be more to it than that, but I would encourage you to be really explicit about why is the delay imposed. I think reuse is the one, maybe the biggest one, like couldn't you put your family in here and modify the floor plan or blah, blah, blah. But I don't know if you've done that, but I'd encourage you to go there.
I don't think it's language that goes in the bylaw. It could be part of the conversation around why we would do
Purpose
this.
statement of the bylaw is exactly what should be in the purpose statement of the bylaw. But you've got language, probably.
Well, let's get the, you know, I think we're gonna leave it for, I think it's the Historic Commission's, is the prime on this, but I think we're saying we'll be happy to help and work with you on this and, you know, maybe a target of April town meeting. It seems to me November town meeting is probably too soon to get the work done which means we need a draft by the fall from our experience with these complicated, controversial things.
So maybe I'll work with Rosemary and we'll talk with Jen about trying to outline a process, and then we can talk about funding We have carryover funding from last year. I don't know the amount, which, because those funds will be used for our general district study first. So we will have some of the additional funds, which historic is part of that professional services, budget. So we could talk about using some of those to help fund the project, but I think I'd like to refine what the scope of work is. The planning board's done this several times where we've used a consultant primarily to work on the visioning portion of it and kind of getting the word out, and then reviewing kind of the draft and making initial comments, and then we kind of work on the promotion piece, the education piece. We do those, we have done a lot of it ourselves.
Mark, if you guys are welcome to have the stuff that we've started. We've got a pretty good selection of old drawings, as well as I think the intern a few months ago downloaded all the vectors of every building in town, every house and everything. Actually, I'm not sure it was the whole town. It may have just been the downtown area. In any case, there's a lot of legwork that you guys are, if that's helpful, you guys could use.
Any quick comments from anybody online about demolition bylaw, delay bylaw? Okay, great, thank.
What's the oldest building in town? Anyone know?
I think it's the house on Bennett Street, the red house.
One that was.
That's no longer there.
I think it is.
There's one on Bridge Street that's pretty old.
How old?
Mm,
16.
Yeah, 1600.
Yeah.
Where is it? Where is it, Chris?
Oh, it's just beyond Bennett Street, up that hill. It doesn't look like an ancient house, but
Stephen
it was
Holtz.
on the house. It was on the house tour.
Yeah,
It's
Stephen Holtz's
17.
house.
Stephen Holtz.
That's part of it is,
Yeah.
Oh, Nancy Cronin's house. Okay. Kathy, did you want to say something?
No, I'm all set.
Okay, you just flashed green on my screen.
Sorry. I was gonna say, thank you.
Okay. Great, so we know what the next steps are, we'll coordinate and get back together probably. We're only gonna meet once in August, on the 10th, but we're not gonna meet on the 24th. So.
That's our summer vacation.
That's our summer vacation. So.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
Great, thank you guys for coming in. Do you need to adjourn your meeting, or you want to continue it in the other room, or, because we have to talk, or you're welcome to stay here.
I think we can adjourn the historic district.
Okay, great, thank you for coming.
Thanks, everybody.
For walking around with us, and nice to see everybody. Okay, I think our next, thank you, Karen, for your patience. We're gonna now talk about the housing production plan and comments that we all had and next steps. So I know a number of us gave some comments to Mark, who passed them, I think, to Karen. I have a couple things I want to talk about. I know Chris had a few things you wanted to talk about.
You can start.
So I'll let Karen start. Tell us where we are and what she thinks we should talk about.
Yeah, thank you very much for your thoughtful reads and comments. I really appreciated it. I have gone through and incorporated the comments from Chris and Sandy, and I sent that revised version to Mark, highlighting the changes. And also, I had some comments on Chris's suggestions in the email. And Mark, I don't know if you passed those on to him or not.
No, not yet.
It would be,
Yeah,
maybe,
I'm not sure when,
what?
when did you submit those?
Last week I sent you a revised version of the,
Plan? That
of the
was,
plan based on Sandy's and
that was,
Chris's comments. And in the email, I also kind of commented in numbered order to Chris's comments. I still have to contact Chris Dam.
Chuck did.
On the kind of capacity issues for sewer and water but I have, I've addressed the comments and to send that off to folks, I guess.
yeah.
I'm in the process of going through Sarah's comments. I'm making real progress, but it's obviously taking some time. There's a lot to get through. And while I'm making those, addressing the comments, I'm also looking at her list of comments and I'm addressing each one in red font as I go along. So you can see my reasoning and what's going on with that. And then I should have another version to you folks based on the addition of Sarah's issues this week. And then take another look. Everything will be tracked so you can see them pretty quickly, as well as kind of responses to various comments. And
So
then
we'll get them,
we'll
get them in
tackle
Word.
that then.
Yeah, if we can get it in Word so we can add comments, I think that would make it easier.
Sometimes the document is so big that it's not easy to, transfer, but let's give it a shot.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Okay, on the substantive front, maybe you can, I know Chris had asked about the lip and a couple other things. Were there some things that you felt, I mean, some of them were editorial, some of the comments at least that I made and Chris made were editorial, formatting and stuff like that. I have a number of substantive things that I feel like the board should discuss. How do we want to proceed?
Well, I'd like to make a couple of general comments.
Yeah.
So Karen, I think the last time we did the housing production plan, it kind of was done, it got accepted by the select board, and then kind of disappeared, went into the attic. And I think over the last 5 years, the town has changed quite a bit, and we're now much more focused on housing issues than we were 5 years ago. And so I think this document may be as important as the master plan in terms of setting policy for the town. And that has two implications. One of them is that we should do more publicity about it. I don't know whether there can be an article in the Cricket about this thing and sort of summarizing it. I also think the strategies we should discuss as a planning board and make them more, highlight them as essential next steps for the town to take. And I want to add a few to what's in the current plan now. For example, preserving the housing authority properties. I think preservation of those is as important as creating new units because they're in bad shape and we're going to lose them if we don't do something about it.
They were included in the previous plan, but I beefed it up.
Yeah, I guess the other thing is that in general, people are going to read the executive summary and not the whole report. And so I think the executive summary should be really carefully written and documented and formatted in such a way that people can read it easily and come away with the conclusions that we want them to come away with. Those are my comments, I guess.
And I just really, I want to emphasize your last comment about that executive summary, because it's 100+ pages.
Yeah.
And that executive summary is the first place that I went. And that's where we need to capture everything that we want to be emphasized in the report and basically supported by us, right?
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
our names
Yes.
on this
Yes.
document.
That's right.
Yeah, that's why I think we should actually take votes on this,
Yeah.
on the strategies.
Yeah, so I think we should, the key sections are 5.7, which is the need, which is the sort of summary of all of those charts and tables. The section 7, which is the goals, and section 8, which is the strategies. And I want to make sure that we slog our way through those pieces, because those are really I think, the key, the key things. And I also felt, I added some things about the barriers. I added,
What do you say? You're saying the
so
7, 8, and what?
5.7 which is the need.
Targeted housing needs.
And 7 is section 7 is goals.
Right.
And section 8 is strategies. So it seems that those are the key so whats of the plan, right?
The other information's helpful as background because it provides you with reasons why.
Right, but, and I do think some of this, I made notes about where, example strategies could be put into the appendix so that, because otherwise we run the risk of having one of those examples, and I didn't read them all, I skimmed them, being irrelevant to Manchester and then being discredited. If it's an appendix or here are examples of what other places have done, then it's just it can be a resource, sort of a I also had another I do want to talk about those things, but I also had a big question that we haven't talked about, and that is, we are 98%, well, first of all, we only have one tax rate. And we are, whatever the 90%, 95%, our tax revenue is from residential tax base. And the zoning districts were developed with the LCD as a way to remedy that. And presumably the cell signaling and the MAC and family medicine projects were in response to that zoning, and therefore are opportunities to reduce the burden on residential revenue. And it seems to me that that it's an example of, we just talked about historic preservation as another goal of the town. Diversifying our tax revenue is another goal of the town, environmental protection, other things. But when we start now seeing these giant residential uses taking up our potential for non-residential tax base, I think that's I don't know where it belongs here, and I'm not sure it belongs here, but I do see it as another among the priorities that the town has long faced, and explains why we have an LCD that doesn't have residential, and in the master plan said we want to reserve this for commercial revenue, tax revenue.
Is your concern that either one or both of those large residential projects will capture a lot of our resources and thus not allow us to further develop the LCD.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that, I guess that's part of it.
Right.
So we're putting our
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
capacity for electricity, and the other piece
Yeah.
I added was electricity and natural gas constraints, which are very real. Water, sewer,
Sewer, all the utilities.
traffic, all those things are getting, if we say, at some point, there's a capacity. We may or may not be at it, but at some point there is, I think. Or you need more water, you need a bigger reservoir, or you need a more well, or you need.
But the thing is, like, that would be, I don't disagree with that, but it's, the town sends mixed messages on that. The
Oh, for sure.
Water and sewer in particular, they say there's a moratorium and then all of a sudden there isn't, so.
Well, there's
I
a
mean,
good reason for that.
Okay,
but
well, I
yeah,
don't know,
yeah,
but that's
but-
part of the education that we'll
Right.
need to consider when we're talking about
Yeah.
this.
There's an
The
explanation.
other capacity issue is the actual availability of land.
Right.
Because in the LCD, what's privately owned that could be developed is basically what's currently being proposed for
Right.
3 or 2 different housing developments. There's really not much else left in the LCD aside from those properties. That of any size, really.
Or that environmentally can support
The
building.
development,
So
yes.
we are essentially, which is maybe not the role of unless one of the goals, and we're going back to section 7, which is goals of housing, is to reflect that this is one among many town goals. And that we have to, I don't know what the answer to that is. It's something we hadn't talked about, and I thought it was worth bringing up, because the master plan does talk about the LCD and the diversification of tax revenue and keeping.
Well, doing those 2 big projects preempts that goal.
Preempts.
I mean,
Yeah. And the other thing I thought about it was also from a state policy perspective, you know, if you're Brookline and you have a whole diverse set of tax revenue sources, asking more of one of those sectors, you know, to go from, let's say they're 50% residential tax to go to 60% is not such a big thing to go from 90% to 95%. You know, it's a very vulnerable, arguably, could be. I think our markets are strong and we're a desirable place to live and all of that, but I don't know. Karen, any comments on that issue?
Not really. I mean, it's unlikely you're gonna have both of those large 40Bs
I
developed.
think it's quite likely. I think it's
You
very
know,
likely.
I mean, it'll be the first one in, basically.
No, because they're gonna, timing wise, the second one is pushing hard to get their comprehensive permit before the other one gets approved.
But what would that mean?
Yeah, but the other one,
Yeah,
the other
it's a-
one's
All the
technically
reason to
approved.
preempt the other?
So is SLV technically approved?
Yeah,
So why does Jefferson have any
because
rights?
you don't have building permits, so you can't.
In fact, they have to be occupied, I think, before you.
Well, there's.
I think we can get them both.
so
I think we
that's
need
why
to
you
find,
might
can't
get
we
one.
find that out?
Yeah, we do.
How do we find that out, Mark? Whether both are possible?
You just have to look up.
Town council?
Meaning, can they
Can a town
both be
council-
built? Can they eventually both be built?
Is
You're
there
talking about, is there enough capacity in our
No,
infrastructure?
no,
to
just
support-
is, because if one gets all the approvals it needs
And
and we
we're
reach our
okay on the
40B,
SHI.
level, then do we have to then allow the second one to be
Can
built?
we
No,
deny
I
If
mean,
you've got safe harbor,
Right, that's.
Right.
But when do we
the first one that
achieve?
gets approved, and you gets documented and approved as part of the SHI would then give you safe harbor. I mean, it's,
But we're not gonna
So it has
get
to get
either.
built.
It's still under appeal.
So I think we'll have
Yeah.
both getting approved
Yeah.
potentially, and potentially could get them both.
But one is approved, Shingle Hill is approved.
But it's not on the ice, it's
But
not
it's under
registered.
appeal.
Right.
Right.
No, it's not, the units are on the,
You
units
can't
can't get on the
tell.
SHI until they're occupied.
Right.
So we don't have any safe harbor until they're occupied, which
Right, so
means
they-
we could have both of them. Yeah,
It is.
it really is.
Yeah. And I just think that we as a community need to understand that and determine what steps, if any, we have. First and
Yeah.
foremost, right?
How much time do you think we have?
Yeah, I mean, that's,
I think we have till, I think that, I don't know,
What's the story on the suit in terms of the timing?
nobody's.
that's not the
Oh,
one
that I
you,
know.
Sarah, it doesn't sound to me like that's the one you're worrying about. You're worrying about the Gordon Woods.
I'm just feeling like this is not the harbor, or whatever that we're on, housing this week. Sorry,
This is stressing you out.
well, I've got historic harbor and housing.
That's what you.
The
I've been
three
reading
H's,
lots of
the three
plans,
H's.
sorry. That, I think that the question is whether or not we should have a friendly, large project, which kind of gives them the green light, gives the Gordon Woods one the green light. I think that the opportunity is to slow that one down and say, listen, you don't get the 285 units, you need to come back with one that's a 40B. That's a, you know, a by right parcel, this is my opinion, because we might end up with them both if that's the case. So
And
I
then
think
we have
that's
400 units.
400 units.
Aye. That's a 20% increase in the units.
Yeah.
So anyway, I agree with you because that is a huge consideration for
And
this
it's
whole plan.
also, not only is it a 40% increase in units, it's
20.
probably a doubling of our, at least a doubling of our rental per unit. Because it doesn't do anything for lowering our costs. That's the thing, that, I mean,
So-
it does get some on the SHI.
So I think what this means is that we need that housing production plan
Right.
goals to be able to figure out Gordon Woods.
Yeah.
Yes,
We have to be able to say to Gordon Woods, to meet our affordability
Yeah.
requirements that we need, this is what your
Right, and the-
project has to look like.
and the goals of the community.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So I have checked section 7, which are the annual housing production goals. Those are,
Right.
at least 11 units per year. I did not include the 40B developments. I included smaller scale developments because I thought there would be like an uproar if we're including one of those 40Bs in those goals. I'm kind of hearing something different from you folks. How?
Well, I mean, it's so complicated, that,
Yeah.
Shingle Hill isn't really financially feasible, the numbers don't work, so it's hard to know whether it really would get built, even if it gets approved.
Does that really affect what that section 8 here talked about? I think that was,
Well, so we know we need a certain number of units for seniors, we need a certain number at 50% AMI, a certain number at 60% AMI. You can actually tell us how many units we need to get out of Gordon Woods to make the goals of the housing production plan.
so that
We
that
don't
gets you
need
your
that
numbers.
project necessarily, and I did include in section 5.7, Chris, computations, breaking down
Yeah, you did.
projected numbers of units by, type of household and tenure, et cetera, and income range.
Delete that. Oh, maybe.
We have to,
Wait a minute.
no, what did you do?
Oh, no. Karen, are you still there? Loser?
I'm here.
Yeah,
Okay,
Thank
good.
you.
Thanks.
She just stopped talking.
She stopped talking just when.
Yeah, just when.
I finished my, yeah.
So I have to ask, this was so data rich, this first part of this thing, and then the last part, talking about what to do. The idea of smaller developments inserted in all over the town versus a one
Yes.
big one here. How does anything do with the big 40Bs how do they affect that theory anyway? Wouldn't we wanna execute this in any case? No?
Well, that's what I made the assumption that you wanted to focus on smaller scale, missing middle, infill development.
Yes.
And that is part of your proactive housing agenda. And that you didn't want to bring in the 40Bs into the housing goals, et cetera. We certainly mention the 40Bs in several places,
Yeah.
but we don't include it as part of your actual agenda. More going towards the friendly 40B, smaller scale development. If you want to assert, once again, include one or both of them, that is a change that would need to be made, and I could make it. But it didn't seem like that's
So that's.
what you wanted to do.
But it's not done, so, I mean,
No, that luckily with Gordon Woods, we have a chance to actually influence what gets designed there. And it may be what we come up with isn't feasible for them, but at least we can make the case.
I think that's optimistic, but,
Yeah,
yeah, so.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean,
it's worth a shot.
I think the likelihood though is that you're gonna end up with Shingle Hill and that, it will get built someday. I mean, values are really high here and they'll be able to charge a lot for rent and,
I'm pretty sure that Jeff Engler and the Gordon Woods folks are also chatting. And have their ducks in a row and
Well,
know
I think-
exactly what they're doing.
Well, the Gordon Woods people are pushing really hard for their permitting to get going. So, really hard. I mean, they were pushing the Concom.
Yes, the
So
last meeting.
they want their permits in before Shingle Place Hill resolves. That's what I think. Because they know that they'll be dead if they don't.
I have to agree with John. I mean, they've gotta be somehow talking with it, just, I mean.
They'd be dumb if they weren't.
They would, exactly.
I mean, what's to prevent Shingle Hill from getting approved, getting through appeals, and then sitting on the project for 6 months, while the other 40B
Right.
sneaks in right behind them,
Exactly.
takes some of the heat off them. I don't know, that's the way I would be thinking
Yikes.
about him.
Are we talking about this anymore?
Yeah, we're up there.
Which is why I keep coming back to it in my brain, finding as many affordable level existing units in town that we possibly can. Of which they exist, they're just not on the SHI, but they're low-hanging fruit.
Isn't that part of Karen's basic
The
premise in
11,
this whole thing?
11 a year, the 11 a year.
That's what I got out of it.
Yeah, because then we can say no. We've got a
And for
window of a
102
year,
pages?
2 years. We keep doing it.
Well, if we could find 11 units, that would throw a monkey wrench into certainly Gordon Woods.
Oh, you
Yeah.
need to get this plan approved.
Right.
You have to finish it, get it submitted,
Is there a deadline for this?
yeah, as soon as possible.
No.
You're talking about
Does the
this plan,
state
right?
have a deadline?
No,
No,
No, but your plan's out of date, so this plan needs to get submitted and approved.
They can't be wrong. I mean, it can't be, it's gotta be, to Chris's point, it's got to be thoughtful. So let's slog our way through some of the, because numbers have to be right, and then they have to be boiled up to a good executive summary, because that's, I think we all agree on that. But if you don't, we've got the goal, we've got the need buried in the back of section 5, deep in the back of section 5, so that's.
Should be brought up front.
So, yeah,
it did seem like a natural progression, first to kind of go through the data analysis to come up with indicators of need that are then distilled in that section 5 that, ultimately inform the strategies and the goals that you're gonna have.
well, again, I don't think we need to worry so much about the sections. It's the executive
Right.
summary where these things are gonna be.
Well, I have executive summary, when you get the updated version with Chris's comments and with Sandy's and Sarah's, you can take a look at it and come back at me with more questions or comments.
Okay.
All right, can we chug our way through the strategies though? Because I think that's the crux of the
Yeah, I
the
think that's a
work.
good idea.
Okay.
that missing middle. Karen, what did you think about the idea? Well, first of all, question, is the state have, did I interpret it correctly? The state has categories of strategies that we must have, is that right?
Yeah, you have to touch base on, each of those categories.
Okay, so but we have to make sure all our strategies are categorized into those, and I would say
Yeah.
only.
And at the beginning of the housing strategy section, I actually listed the categories and the strategies under each one.
Right, I saw that, but you didn't have them all. There were some orphaned ones that I pointed out. And I think that there's another.
The new ones you suggested.
And then there's some new ones I suggested. Do you like the idea of a table? It just seemed like a table would be helpful to see.
I can do that.
Okay. So maybe we can look at
Are you talking about the table on page 61?
No, I'm talking, this is deeper than that.
So have you sent your comments around to everybody?
No, because that would be, we're not allowed to do that because of open meeting
Okay.
law.
Well, what I've done is looking at taking your comments and kind of one by one, responding to them. And then once that's done, you can send it to everybody, right?
Correct.
Yes.
So let's just go through the strategies. The strategies here that, if you look up at the, if you look up here at the screen, because I don't know how else to do this in the open meet, you have to do these in an open meeting.
Where is this chart in the document?
No, it's nowhere. It's
Okay.
only on the screen right now.
Aha, okay.
So, I'm proposing that the strategies, rather than be in narrative, that they be in a table. So you have the state requirement, which is this first column. And as Karen said, then there's the strategy, which is make additional changes to the general district. And then we have the responsibility, because she has that, and then a time frame. And then you have my comments, which would get deleted. This was my comment, I didn't know, so ignore that was just my editorial comments. So the first one is identification of zoning district areas to modify current regulations. So there's the change in the general district. But then we also have talked about changing D1 and D2 to make it increase housing strategies. I suggested adding another zoning category is to combine D1 and D2 districts to increase areas with two-family is allowed by right. Right? Isn't that a zoning change that we've talked about?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. The other one is to update inclusionary zoning and residential conservation cluster zoning to allow their use on smaller parcels.
Yep.
So those would be additional. And then a third one is to include universal design and visitability standards in design standards. That's a zoning change. These are, and then I pulled that from a narrative that was somewhere in the, and then the fourth one is update zoning to incentivize smaller scale projects that address the missing middle. And I don't really know what that means.
Which we have in the draft already under make additional change, encourage more housing diversity with design guidelines and dimensional standards.
Is that one of your strategies? But it's
Yeah.
So Sarah, let me understand what this is. So what you did is take the content
And put
of
it
the
in a table.
strategy section and put it in a table.
And then I also added a few things. So
Okay.
You're not talking about taking out all the narrative on the strategies, are you?
No, but I'm creating,
Yeah.
saying create a summary table. So we
Yeah,
can-
the summary tables works for me, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, except that,
To go where? Is it just, I mean,
in the,
appendix
I
or?
think it,
Maybe
no, I
there's
think
a
it
first,
goes at the start of the section,
the
and then the narrative
Right.
describes
also
it.
made
there's
the
a first
executive summary,
paragraph
too.
and then the chart and then the details.
Yeah, it's just, as it's written right now, it's so dense that you can't
Yeah, it's a lot.
figure out what you're.
Yeah, I
Is,
agree with
is
you.
there a way you can distribute that to us
Yeah, I
so
will
we can
send
kind
it.
of think about it and, yeah.
Or,
You
but,
can send it, I can forward.
yeah, I can forward it too. So those were a couple of additional, I had on page 60, I said it in my comments, it's on page 62. So I think we have agreement that to add zoning changes that are combine D1 and D2 to increase the area, update inclusionary zoning and residential conservation to allow their use on smaller parcels. And then the other two I took from narrative that were scattered around because they seemed like they were zoning. So that was, so I think,
Can I just make a couple questions?
yeah.
One is that we have included in the draft, the issue of universal design and visibility standards. Do you want a separate strategy just on that, besides making sure that, you know, this is early in the strategy section? One of the initial paragraphs was on including that? Or you really want a separate strategy just on that?
It's a zoning change in of itself to change design standards, I think. Or to incorporate design standards into a broader array of parcel of applicability. I mean, I don't think it's a subset of other things. I do think it's a.
So she's got it down as encourage more housing diversity with design guidelines. That's under the zoning strategy.
What does that mean?
Okay, but, yeah,
What does that mean?
exactly. What does that mean? And that's why,
It needs to get specific.
right, some of those things, that was one of the ones that I said,
So I guess you
Can
could,
I also mention, under inclusionary zoning, it seems like besides allowing their use on smaller parcels, it seems like your payment in lieu of units is more complicated and probably there are better formulas.
yes,
so we should try, that's
Calculate.
another zoning change, remove payment in lieu of units.
yeah,
No, you just change the formula to make sure that any payment actually is sufficient to cover the cost of another affordable unit.
But the
The
problem-
current formula you have seems to me very awkward. And you've explained that it hasn't generated sufficient fees to actually cover an additional affordable unit.
So you're exactly
So
right.
besides this one, do you want to do a little bit more drilling down on the inclusionary zoning bylaws?
yes.
Yes,
There is a risk, however, which we've discovered already with our 3A, which is if you have inclusionary zoning required, they'll just not build that many units. They'll just say, I'll just build 4
Well,
instead of 5.
Even
I
worse.
should add that at this point, there are very few places where inclusionary zoning works. It's like the harbor edge maybe, or, I mean, it's very limited because you have inclusionary mandates in, embedded in other bylaws.
Yeah, and for small scale.
So the problem is that we designed our 3A zoning to be small developments.
Yeah, exactly.
right.
And small developments do not get to the level
Right.
to include affordable housing.
Exactly.
And our general district only allows 4 units,
Yeah,
which is, the 5th one is the affordable.
yeah.
So
So that's
we have,
gotta change.
we have
So you want-
excluded affordable housing as a result.
So
Effective.
you want to change the threshold from 6+ units to what, 4+ units?
No, it is 4.
It is 4.
Your inclusionary bylaws 4?
Well, it's 5, actually. When you get to 5,
20%.
20%, yeah. So when you get to 5, one of them has to be affordable.
But the trouble
Well,
is
it would
the,
be really helpful if you folks could like give me a sense of what you want. I mean, it's hard for me to kind
That's what we're
This is
trying
The
to.
first time we're
What?
having this conversation,
Yeah, that's right.
of, yeah,
good conversation.
Yes. So I think that on inclusionary zoning, we want small, we want it more broadly applicable, and we want to remedy the currently insufficient payment in lieu of building, whatever, whether it's a larger sum, or I think the problem is people can buy their way out of it,
Well,
and the challenge is that we don't actually ever get anything built,
right.
because we're allowing people to buy out.
Well, it's also to John's point, though, that the zoning itself cuts itself off at the knees.
I mean, the reality is, you're gonna have, and you have, small projects.
Right.
So, I mean, if you wanna change your zoning to allow lots of big projects, you know, which nobody seems to wanna do, then you're not gonna get, like, if you say you have, you know, 20 acres or a 10-acre property, you can put 10 units an acre in any district, right? Or in the our big lot districts along the ocean. But that zoning change is not gonna pass, so you're not gonna get.
And not only that, but there aren't any 10 acres, there aren't any 10-acre parcels.
I
Well,
don't,
there's some of the big estate parcels.
I don't think that's what's being suggested, though, Mark. I think what's being suggested is get rid of the 4 cap and make it a 6 cap.
But
You
you're
know?
still not gonna get,
Yeah.
you're still not gonna get, if it's
But you've got a
4
better
plus
chance
2
of it.
Plus 2, it still has the problem of the challenge of these small, this challenge of having small 1 or 2 big A affordable units, and the administrative burden and the cost.
Well, the administrative burden and figuring out a way to handle that is a whole separate problem. But at least you remove the obstacle of the cap.
you know, the thing we try to stress in the plan is, you know, more the carrot instead of the stick, which is the idea that you kind of reintroduce something similar to what you had in that NOFA before, but you're offering more money, and 2, you're offering technical assistance on that front related to making sure the units are included in the SHI to like assist owners and in participating in these programs. So it's
Which is-
more providing, you know, that kind of carrot
And that's critical to John's idea of trying to find 11 scattered units.
Yeah.
You're not
Yeah.
gonna do that without somebody putting it together.
Like, let's just imagine for a moment that someone wanted to come in and build 11 units a year, which would be great for us because it would keep safe harbor, right? We'd be safe. Okay, great. We love that idea. Oh, our zoning doesn't allow more than 4 units in the general district. What do we do? Right? So
But if there are 11 units and they're all in the SHI, it would be a friendly 40B, and it would happen like that.
Yeah.
So the problem is that people want to buy.
Well, so you're saying the 4 would dissolve, so the
Right,
limit
if
of.
you have a parcel, if you want to take.
If you're under a 40B, the zoning is waived, so
Right.
there's no more density limit.
So you could have a 12 unit with 6 of them affordable, and you'd have a 40B by right, right?
Sure.
And all 12 would count. So I think that the other thing is just how did we get to where we are with the CHODs and the downtown is right or wrong. We made a determination that we had a number of goals, commercial for, mixed use, and that we wanted to pass it. And town council said it had to be 2/3, whether it was or not, who knows. And part of the way you pass zoning in town successfully, whether it's the right whether it's too cautious or not, has been to say, we're making changes, but we're not making too many changes. We're keeping things largely the way they are with some changes. You know, so,
True.
that may not be but when you go down in flames on zoning, around here, it comes back, we withdrew 5 zoning articles, just passed over them, and people will tell you that they all failed.
Yes,
And they have remembered that they all failed, and it comes up over and over and over. And the fact of the matter is that the downtown zoning, I mean, I actually enumerated the things that the downtown zoning did. It changed a 3 acres of single family zone with 22,000, it could have been 6 single family homes to 15 units an acre. The downtown zoning was not insignificant in housing, not necessarily a big A affordable housing. But we actually moved that needle, I would argue, a lot. By right, 4 units as opposed to special permit, I mean, a whole bunch of things.
It would help me out a lot if you could play out the scenario that John was just suggesting, though. Some developer comes, they can do 11 infill sort of units or 11 units. What's the path?
So, I mean, the last town I was in had a lot of farmland, a lot of, those 5-acre, 10-acre pieces that were split off over the years. And there was a local developer who had done a lot of those types of small 40Bs, 10 units, 20 units, townhouses mostly. And he had, when I was there, he actually did a small lot subdivision. He hadn't built it yet, but we went through the process of like 12 single family, like ranch style, simple homes, kind of like what you're talking about here. But you don't have, your community's not built like that. You don't have the
So, but I can
properties
give you
like
an actual thing that happened last fall.
Okay.
So there was a property came up for sale at 115 School Street.
Oh, yeah.
And the Affordable Housing Trust went to a developer, a nonprofit developer, Harbor Light Homes. Would they be interested in working with us? Sure, he said, if you buy the property, I'll build 12, 15 senior condos, all of them affordable 40B. That would have put us right into
In the 1-year delay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the plan includes
but unfortunately, it's all to the bottom.
Yeah, but that's part of real estate.
That's part of real estate.
Part of real estate, you have to have enough.
But that's the strategy that we should be using.
Yeah.
The plan includes under zoning, promoting a local initiatives program, which kind of lays out the step with a developer in order to get approval from the state on a project that meets local needs and the select board can embrace, and then, jointly submit the comp permit to the ZBA. And that's kind of laid out. So the first thing you'd want is for a developer potentially interested to come to Housing Trust or the select board about a proposal that it thinks they would like to do a friendly 40B.
Yeah.
I mean, if you play back the clock to the 115 School Street, basically, there was a parcel for sale and you went after it. So one of the important strategies is to keep an eye on the real estate market and seek to purchase a parcel.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that's what you're doing, but if we don't have that spelled out as a strategy, as go buy land.
It's in there.
It is.
It's
Okay.
in under, it's in about that the Housing Trust explains what, it's done in the past to acquire property and explore opportunities. And then it basically says that the Housing Trust will continue to seek out opportunities that it can work on to develop in partnership with some other kind of entity.
I think we've got to get these words more, so I think you're saying promote scattered site infill development through friendly 40B. as opposed to buy land, you know, use the Affordable
Well-
Housing Trust.
Well, it's not a great idea for the Affordable Housing Trust to buy land, although we certainly could. But maybe there should be more specific examples. Maybe we should say, pursue the DPW site on Pleasant Street. So when it's available, we're gonna push very hard to make it affordable housing. Standpipe Hill, maybe we go back after Standpipe Hill again. Even though it's conservation land, there's a process to get it undone.
Or the church on School Street.
Or the church on School Street, or the senior center, on top of the senior center. These are all,
Or 6 School Street, or, I mean,
yeah, maybe we
there's a
should
long
list,
list.
actually list the properties and say
What's
these are the ones we
6
should
School
go
Street?
after. And others
Oh,
that
it's
may
that
come
big
along.
house.
no, no, sorry, 2 School Street.
Craft.
Craft.
The Hoopers.
The old grocery store.
Yeah, the Affordable Housing Trust looked at that building too.
Did you guys have a chance to buy it?
Well, we made an offer to the Hoopers, but they
Went for
for a bigger number, yes.
How many sites have you guys gone after and not gotten?
Depends what you mean by gone after. I
Well, the one on
suppose.
Summer Street, School Street.
Summer-
Hoopers, probably.
So there's probably 5 of them, 5 or 6.
Did you guys go after the corner end?
No.
Thank goodness. So can I just make a comment, because
It's late.
doing what we're doing right now quite possibly could take forever. And I think that Karen has done a good job at accumulating a lot of information. And I just have to go back to that executive summary,
Yeah.
because we've got to make that our endorsement, not endorsement, but our position, really. And so I think that what we might want to do is, you've outlined the areas, Sarah, and I agree with you that those are the important ones. And I think that we've just got to work together to consolidate those, to include them into the executive summary and make that executive summary longer. Because I just wonder how many residents of Manchester are going to read 103 pages of a
No
housing production plan, right? But they might read 5 pages of an executive summary. And we're very careful about what's in there, because those are the things that they're going to focus on.
Actually, Gloucester, Gary Gilbert sent me a thing, Gloucester had sort of the summary of their housing production plan on one sheet of paper.
Wow.
Perfect.
It was kind of cool. It was
Yeah.
pretty vague, but it was.
But if you want more information, here you go here's the link. You can
So
go and
it
look
had
it up.
like, here's the need, there are so many people that need housing, blah, blah, blah. Here's the obstacles, or list 5 obstacles, here's what we're gonna do.
That's an executive summary, right? In
Well,
its
that's a-
crudest form.
That's a handout at a forum.
Yeah.
But that's what, in this, you named it, in this attention-starved culture that we live,
Yeah.
you're not gonna get someone to read 105 pages and find the strategies on
Right.
page 95, or whatever page it is.
So I think we're saying that we're gonna wait for, Karen's gonna incorporate
Yeah.
comments if there are other comments, but I think the other piece that we're saying is we want to we want to continue to say, I don't know, find a parcel of land. And you've got that in a bunch of places. We don't have to identify the parcels, thank God, in this plan. But to say, Affordable Housing Trust needs to continue to seek a parcel of land. The municipality still needs to look at, that long list of properties that we've got in there, that we need to pursue those. And then the third thing that is buried but needs to be very high on there is preserve our existing affordable housing as
Yes, yes.
And I think that the development of the expansion of Newport Park and the Plains needs to be very high as a
Yeah.
high
Yeah,
priority.
I agree,
Agree with
absolutely
that.
agree.
Yeah.
Because that's land that,
That's low-hanging fruit, if there is such a thing.
yeah. I mean, maybe the highest priority lands are those that are adjacent to, I don't know, that's how that works really, but, so any other comments that were controversial, like I suggested my ads, I also, just a couple other substantive things that I had.
Is Karen still accepting comments? Because I can certainly,
I thought you said.
I have intended, no, I focused pretty intensely on the executive summary because that seemed most important to me. But there are some questions I have about some of the figures that will be maybe in an appendix ultimately, so.
Yeah, I think we
because
need to
it
get
be-
them to her soon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, I will try and do that.
I added some additional constraints. I said economics. You know, I intended those paragraphs to be kind of a draft of what you could just, it said Manchester's housing stock is generally old, some dating
They were
back.
good.
Yeah, and then the desirability of Manchester real estate has kept prices high for decades. Even unimproved land with poor soils and significant ledge is commanding record prices. Developers are buying old homes, renovating or rebuilding them and reselling them. And then I asked to add electric and gas infrastructure to the infrastructure section. I also suggested that we reframe the community perceptions to say, I'll just summarize this, that concern about the cost of housing is widespread, but town meeting voters have easily passed 4 significant zoning changes to allow increased density. In addition, the Affordable Housing Trust funding is approved annually at town meeting by near unanimous votes. A philanthropic effort raised considerable funds to fund the purchase of an existing apartment building to add it to the SHI. Community members generally value town character, which means different things to different people. The planning board generally interprets this to mean small scale, a diversity of architectural styles, and a vibrant downtown. Because I don't know what that really means. It means something different to everybody. The community sentiment is less enthusiastic. I took this from Stowe's plan. Is less enthusiastic about large developments that increase the town's population by more than 10% and offer the majority of units at significantly higher than current average rents, are in the water supply watershed, or have other challenges. The community regularly is concerned about water quality and quantity, downtown congestion and parking, and open space preservation. In the public hearing for the plan, there was considerable discussion about the difficulty of developing small, affordable projects, converting existing properties. One property owner indicated they were willing but could not figure out or afford the complicated process that is required. So that was sort of more of a Manchester-centric.
Thank you, I added those. I
Okay,
also
good.
added a constraint that Chris suggested.
And the last constraint that I added was staff and volunteer capacity. Manchester has 1 staff person who assists with housing planning, open space, and conservation. I guess I should add historic. Routine applicants are constant, and the balance of these efforts falls to volunteer boards. Even with the benefit of grants and consultants, work is considerable and must be prioritized. And Manchester's town meeting occurs once a year, and complex zoning changes require considerable citizen education, collateral material, and public hearing time. These take human resources as well as considerable calendar time. The zoning change for the annual town meeting must be in solid draft form by January, for example. Because I think that's an important constraint. I don't know that it changes any outcomes, but to me, those were important things.
So these are all things that it sounds like Karen's already
Yeah.
incorporated into.
I just want to make
the
sure
plan.
those are substantive things, so I just want to make sure that we're not, I think I raised the other substantive things that I had. So, all right. So I guess the next step is Karen's going to take the next draft, and then you're going to be away for the next meeting. So Mark and I talked a little bit about getting it to us for a vote at the next meeting, August 10th, but that we would try to give the draft to the select board before their August 3rd meeting, so that on their second meeting, if they meet in August, they can vote to approve it, and they will have had.
Oh, August 3rd is next week.
Yeah, I know. So we're not going to get it to them.
They will have had 3 weeks to
They
read
will
it.
have 3 weeks
Okay,
to
good.
look at it.
That's why they're gonna need it.
Yeah. But, and then maybe we focus our comments mostly on the executive summary going forward. Does that make sense? After I think maybe you take and save if you've got data comments.
I have a bunch of comments, because I'm pretty, Karen, the one thing that concerns me about, as far as I've gotten, which is about the economics and demo, but all that stuff can be in an appendix. I don't know that it needs to be upfront. But the numbers are not comparable because they're not some of them are inflation adjusted, which is great, but others are not. And so you're basically comparing, if you compare 150, anyway, I'll write it out and I'll try and get through the whole doc in a.
My suggestion at this point was to at least identify those that are inflation adjusted and or have some way of either the default is not adjusted or the default is adjusted and indicate in each table. Oh, the other thing.
And there's some mathematics that is just wrong.
That's right. I like a couple of those.
And we can't put a document out that says this is the basis for our concern.
Right.
This is the basis for the plan, and not have the numbers be correct.
Yeah. I found one additional mistake. But.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, I mean, it's a big
No, I
document.
was talking
You're
to
dealing with
Sarah, found a total that was incorrect.
Yeah.
But the important thing about that is that it significantly decreased the loss of rentals over that time period by like 40.
Right, so it gives you a very
and the other
different
piece
impression
that,
about what's
given
going
that our
on.
numbers are small, when you take Zero School Street off the rentals to give it a building permit, so it's one building permit it was 13, now it's 12 units. You've removed this big chunk artificially. So things like that, when we know them, we know that there's this 13 units that came offline at the same time as the 2024 census. You're making this
It makes a
assertion
dent, right?
that we're losing rental units.
But we're not.
Well, we
They're
may be, but where else are
You're
we?
making some gains. There's a reporting lapse, you know?
Right, so I was thinking, I might try to do a limits to data, which any kind of time we have a big report like with data that says, here's the way the data is limited. You're limited because of your sources, and your sources
Right.
don't know the local, they don't
I
know
think
that.
that's a great idea, and that
Yeah,
should be
anyway.
at the top of the plan as
Yeah,
well.
it should be a
disclaimer of
Yeah.
sorts, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll work on
absolutely.
that.
That's great.
Thanks.
I will try and get you comments, Karen, but before the end of the week. But the good news and the bad news, I guess, is that we all think it's really important that we want it to be just so.
Got it.
Okay. Okay, anything else in the housing production plan? Okay, what else do we have on our agenda? I just lost my agenda.
Oh, good.
Thank you, guest Karen. Thank you very much for sitting through our whole meeting and your.
Thank you for your help. We'll
It's,
be back at you with this week.
The good thing is we're careful readers, I guess.
I appreciate it.
Okay, correspondent, discussion of zoning changes for fall town meeting.
I was hoping to have a few drafts for you, but I didn't quite get to them, but I will try.
I think we put that on in September. We're not gonna do anything about that between now and.
I'd like to,
Let's,
yeah, but I'd like to get some drafts.
So
Some
why
of
you-
them are pretty simple, so.
why don't we be ready to go with those in September with drafts and.
Okay, because it'd be nice to be able to get rid of, take care of, get them submitted for town meeting in the fall.
Yeah.
So that we, in the spring, we'll have several significant things. So
I'm
that we
not
don't muddy
disagreeing.
it up with.
I'm saying, why don't we
Yep, okay.
take a chunk of time? The
Yeah.
housing production plan will be off our list, and we will dig into signs or whatever.
Okay, yep.
Okay. I think there was some correspondence in the folder, nothing And approval of minutes of July 13th. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, hearing none. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Peter, you didn't even go on the sidewalk, so.
I know.